How can you be confident, and in fact I'll tell you that you cannot be confident, that if God was all-powerful, does God have the power to deceive himself that he is not God? You cannot be certain that you didn't go into this knowing that eventually you'd wake up. You couldn't be certain that there could even be some like plot outside of this, even in the relative domain, in terms of like there was another life with other like entities and different like physics, etc. And they were like, right, you gotta go into, check out Aubrey Marcus, he's pretty cool. And it's like this plot about they're like, you're gonna go to Earth and you're not gonna have any memory of where you come from, and you're gonna go there and you're gonna go there to create a new Earth. And at times you'll have no idea, you'll feel very lost, but eventually you'll find the others. And then eventually when you save this place, you'll come home and you'll remember. It's like, you can't be certain that it isn't. I'm not saying it is. I'm also saying you cannot be certain, like, because the reason I think of this is that, for example, I had like a boss at a job very recently. We were talking about the pyramids, and he goes, yeah, well, I mean, we had all tools back then, you know, like, and I was like, why are you're very confident that we're just biological animals on Earth. And he's like, well, I ain't got nothing else to go by. He sent me a video by Brian Cox, yeah. I'll actually play the clip.
What more do you want? You know, when I see people who go, I want more than that. You know, there must be more to it. What do you mean? The ingredients in our bodies were assembled in the hearts of long dead stars over billions of years, and have assembled themselves spontaneously into temporary structures that can think and feel and explore. And then those structures will decay away again at some point, and in a very far future there'll be no structures left. So there we are, we exist in this little window when we can observe this magnificent universe. Why do you want any more?
To which then I replied,
yeah, but time doesn't exist though, because it's not like there's just some material shit floating around in space somewhere and no one's alive, and then this material stuff just so happens to settle in the right configuration. And oh, this is the recipe for awareness. Here it is in linear time, and then everything will die, and then that will be it. Then it will never happen again. It's like the most insane, game-changing paradigm shift or mind blow. The fact that consciousness just appeared. Here you are. You just woke up. You didn't really ask for it seems. And the fact that that can happen at all, that's it. That's all you need to know, is no matter what the fuck you think, in the emptiness of the emptiness, vastness, somehow colours and sounds emerged. And what can happen once can happen again. There's no time. Time doesn't exist. Time is, what about then in a dream, yeah? All of that is just pure imagination, right? So when I'm in a dream, yeah, and I'm stood there with you and Potch and everyone at work, yeah, and I'm imagining all this shit, and there's a whole landscape and everything's going down, then what about that? Because the substance of that is pure imagination. It's not that we're going, oh, we want more, like it needs to be more fluffy than that, and then you're coming out, oh, we just listen to the facts, just the science. It's not that. It's not we want more. We don't want to be fluffy. We don't want to be. It's just we want truth still. We don't want to believe in, but it's like there are actual loopholes in his logic and shit. Like, oh, you know, we're just and you got to take those into account. Like, you don't actually know. We want, like, I don't know the 100% truth, but we cannot be certain that it's just some external world physical shit. You can't be certain of that, because I know that there's definitely other possibilities that we can't know, that it's definitely not those. That's the thing. So at least you got to be open-minded to the fact that it could be more than that. Yeah, but you can be certain of some things. Like, you can be certain of I am. That's like the one thing you can be certain of, that consciousness is, and things like this. But the things that you aren't certain of, you have to be willing to explore those loopholes. I'm not saying I am certain of anything, but I'm saying you can't be certain, yeah, that you didn't create all of this in God mode, and then deceived yourself and made you forget. And like children who dare each other, how far out could you go? Where you really do think, oh, I'm just poor old me, I'm just poor old Gavin on this fucking rock. And then, obviously, the reason you do that is so that you can experience different things through self-deception, because you actually fool yourself into believing that you're Gavin, but you're not. So without self-deception, you wouldn't be able to fool yourself into believing all sorts of different dreams to explore the infinityness. But yeah, science don't actually tell you fuck all, though. That's the thing. It don't tell you nothing. And there's that, the way I cannot listen to some cunt just tell me that it's just fucking dust with some water. It's just that here I am, and it's just some meaningless fluke. Like, it's so personal that can't be. How the fuck can you go through all of this trials and tribulations, all these personal fucking ups and downs here, and then, because science don't tell you the meaning of nothing, they just tell you how the physical world is. Like, it just measures the physical world. We could go on forever. You should come on the podcast, Gavin. Come on the OXSN podcast, and I'll have a material rationalist gets indoctrinated. But yeah, an analogy I come up with the other day is that, like, you could never enjoy a dinner if you weren't hungry or starving for it. So the reason why, potentially, you know, here's some wishful thinking for you. Here's how I cope with with the questions I can't answer. Oh, who knows? Here we go. So here's the ultimate cope. Is the reason why everything's shit right now is because you need contrast, like the yin and the yang. Because you couldn't enjoy dinner if you was never hungry. So that's the ultimate cope. Is the reason why everything's shit is because it's like when you're freezing cold, you appreciate the warm. Because when you was God, you was just an infinite singularity. So you had everything. It was completely one and not divided. Infinite consciousness, yeah. And then, obviously, to have a bit of an adventure, like a movie or a song or whatever, you divided everything and fooled yourself and deceived. Because if God was all powerful, does God have the power to deceive himself into thinking that he ain't God? Well, if not, then he's not all powerful and he's not God. So that's what you done anyway. You deceived yourself, and you're lost. You grow up from ignorance, and then through time, everything will get more and more interconnected, and eventually you'll realise that inner and outer space are exactly the same. When you start hearing voices speaking inside of your brain, and you might start to feel just a bit like you're going insane. And maybe you are, because inner and outer space are exactly the same. So yeah, you had to deprive yourself of things so that you can get them and then actually appreciate them, because otherwise, as you've probably been aware, humans just take everything for granted until it gets taken away. So that's that. And then yeah, so the reason I say that is just because we can't be certain that this is not the case. So obviously you're in the scientific paradigm or whatever, but how do we, so what the main point is that we cannot be certain of that, science being the case, the way that you say it. You say, well, we can't be certain of anything. Maybe not, except a few things. But even if we can't be certain of everything, that's not the point. It's that it has to be open-ended or optimistic. That we can't, because we can't be certain of anything. That means we can't be certain of your science paradigm. So take this. It's from Alan Watts. Is what if you could dream any dream you wanted to dream? Oh, you'd have love affairs and you'd have loads of amazing food and shit like this, right? And then, well, you get bored of that, so you'd want to introduce a bit of challenge. So you'd add some nuance and some yin and yang, bad versus good, you know, so you can have all the Marvel movies, etc. You know, you could dream them up with a bit of fucking turbulence, you know, so it's a bit interesting. So it's not just oneness, and it's not heaven on earth, because you get bored of heaven on earth. I've been there on some psychedelic trips. Eventually you're like, fuck this, let me go back to pretending that everything wasn't perfect. So yeah, you get bored of dreaming everything you want, because if you get everything you want the moment you get it, then what's the fucking point, really? And eventually you'll realise that. So yeah, then you go through and you set some limitations, yeah, so you can save fucking princesses from dragons and shit, yeah. And then eventually you're like, well, fuck me, if I'm just God, then, well, as long as I wake up eventually, I may as well forget that I'm dreaming. And that, how do we not know? And you can't deny it. You cannot deny that you might have just forgot that you was dreaming, and you done it because to entertain yourself, you know, so you can really believe that you're gabbing. But yeah, there's that.
And it's relevant, but like the like, why is it, yeah, that every human like I've ever met in the flesh, and I would have thought I was crazy if it weren't for the internet and like books and things. Like everyone has this. I hate hearing this so much. Someone actually said it to me, for example, someone was talking to me about my like the spiritual stuff, and they were like, oh, like all the stuff that I talk about, and they were like, well, at the end of the day, you're like, we're just a speck of dust in the middle of space, and it's just like, we're so small in the infinite scale of things. And basically, it's like not just that, but people say it in general. People just like, there's a belief very prevalently, I'm sure you've noticed in Western culture, that we are on a rock hurling through space in a random direction. But the thing is that I've said this. I actually said it to like my boss, who I just sent the message to as well. I said, like, science works to measure and manipulate physical reality, but when it goes wrong is when people turn it into a philosophy. And then he goes, well, you can't. And it actually used to be called, like centuries ago, science was actually called natural philosophy. But what I mean by turning science into a philosophy, or like a worldview, a dogma, is basically that people go beyond because when you understand metaphysics and the loopholes that I was just talking about, is like you understand that like reality is strange, loopy. There's a lot of self-deception, but like there are potentially like bigger games at play behind physics. Like just because there is only, that's all that we can kind of see, and like it's the world, but now, because there are other worlds, there are internal worlds, and like how do you not know that physics is not, you created it in the editor and then you pressed play, or like, because like just because there is like stuff here, like the world is like, because it's I think Terence McKenna actually said something very interesting. Like it kind of ignores when I said like, oh, life is so personal, that to just disregard it all as dust with water or some shit. It just like, I can't conceive of that, because what I don't understand, like why the universe would incarnate just to be in like a literally like a dumb brute matter blind force, where the name of the game is literally like that Brian Cox just says, where he's like, yeah, and then some dust arranged, and now we can think for a minute. And the name of the game is literally, you're in this like stagnant physics somewhere in space in linear time, and there isn't like a holistic, like reason or like loving force, or like that like not necessarily. I'm not saying there is a loving force. I'm not talking about what I believe. I'm talking about how the way that they see it is like there's no, like as if some random corner in some actual physical place in some actual time, like something happened in physics, therefore like some physics somehow got in the right configuration where it become awake, and it's just a weird phenomenon, and how lucky we are. And then it will die, and then, like the heat death of the universe, everything will die, and then there will be nothing again. But it's like, There isn't any time. If it can happen once, it can happen again. Like I say, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. I didn't look at that message just now, but it's like I feel like I keep like branching off and leaving other points. I'm by the way, I've just smoked some weed. I was off it for like 2 days. You can tell normally when my voice is lower, or like I seem to have lower energy, that's when I've had a joint. But when I'm more expressive and vibrant, you can tell. But I don't know, like I don't know how I feel about weed at the minute, but I'm just, I don't know why I told you that. But there's a clear contrast, and I don't know. I'm gonna make a video actually about weed, and there's a lot of downsides to it. I can definitely tell, but it depends. It's quite strange. It's quite a deep topic. And when it comes to what I believe, but I don't believe in believing. Like that's what Terence McKenna says, and that just reminded me. Sorry, yeah, Terence McKenna said, yeah, that the scientific kind of paradigm or philosophy kind of ignores the what he called like the invisible author, where it's almost like you're in a movie. Or the same kind of structure as a song, where there's climax, there's drama, there's revelations, but it's so like personal and like it just don't make sense to me. But yeah, also I think like why, and I'm pretty sure why would the universe, this is kind of like a cope in a way, but it's like this is what I tell myself is like, I don't understand why the universe would incarnate and then like just fuck itself over. Like how is it gonna spawn and then like stack the odds against itself and then just like get depressed and like ill and die slowly, but then not like, because that can happen, and maybe I'm open to the fact that we're in a relative plane and that my decisions are fundamental and I can fuck up my life in terms of well, fuck it up if you're going to perceive it that way, like, you know, and end up in misery and have a shit life and then die with loose ends. I'm open to that somewhat in the relative plane, but the idea that that would happen and then it would just cut off and that would be the end of it forever, and it's like I don't understand, like I don't get how it could be to, like, it's not like I just don't want to believe that that's the case, but it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm like, how are you gonna spawn? Like, I'm not saying that, like, because in the past I was very depressed. I've had like such a good time that, like, that in its sense, like, I've already fulfilled my life because I've had good memories and that, and obviously I want to do more. Fuck me, I'm not done. But I mean, like the idea, like, because this paradigm of we're just in a rock is that like just floating around, and it's just a fluke basically. Is I do not believe that any speck of reality is a fluke. Because the fact, like, I just know it in the present moment. It's like the fact that this has appeared, seemingly I didn't really ask for it. It just kind of happened to me, and here it is. And it kind of ties into forgiveness in a way. How it's like, no, there isn't even a self. Like, how much control do you think you have? You didn't ask for this, did you? Or did you? Did you make yourself forget? What's the fuck's going on? And I keep forgetting that, yeah, that's what weed does. It makes me like go forward full blast, and then I just leave everything in the dust and I just forget what I was on about. Something that's relevant though, that I won't bore you, I might have said it a million times, but on one level, what can seem like chaos, like my fucking patterns on my hands, if you zoom in, the atoms will be perfectly aligned in sacred geometry. So it's a metaphor for how what is seen on one level as chaos can be seen on another level as unity. This ties into the Tao Te Ching and Alan Watts. Listen to Alan Watts' The Web of Life. Oh yeah, so like it's the idea that that there are actually beings outside of myself, which I'm open to an extent. I don't know. That one's a tricky one. The solipsism is tricky, but it's that people really believe and think that, like, we are beings on a rock to such an extent that people, like, that a life just as personal and, like, you know, as yours, as if basically you know, a consciousness can awake in a very shitty place, seemingly, as we see on the news. That does actually happen to real people, right? It does actually happen to human beings, as we're aware. Some people do get born with like some terrorist fucking parents who just don't ever let them out of the basement or some shit, and they have like 9 kids down there and just chain them to a bed or some shit and just like never feed them and just like do all sorts of horrible shit. And then some of them will just go through that be in constant misery and then die. And then the idea that that can happen to a consciousness that wakes up and then it just gets fucking battered and then it dies. Okay, I'm open to that on the relative thing, as I said, but the idea that there won't be some kind of after death, or like an understanding in a strange loopy way, because what I experience is the reason I think about this example is because this is kind of how I felt when I was younger. I grew up and then I just became very depressed. And what do you mean depressed? To be great? No, but in my experience, I was very fearful and insecure to such an extent that I was not having a good time. And I really did not like it. Like, at times, like, you can kind of put it on and almost play into it as if it's cool. But at other times, I'm like, you want it to go away and you can't tell anyone about it. It's like, because you don't know how to talk about it. It's just your brain is fucked for some reason. All sorts of things like poor health and just bad understanding. But then this was going on for years. And I was like, and it was like, and that's what I thought to myself. I was like, how the fuck do I just spawn? I didn't ask for this, and now I'm just getting battered. And then, of course, what happened is I realised the reason for this is I've caught on to the plan, and the plan is infinite love. But you don't have to believe me. The plan, forget that. The plan is like you seem so lost, but then you have progressed into God realization. And you don't even have to listen to that or believe me, because now I'm getting way out there, but stay with me for a second. What I mean is, it didn't just end, and then there's just basically loose ends, like open-ended questions. The truth is, that I become directly conscious of, is that, basically, when I had one episode on psychedelics, I took a 3.5 grams of psilocybin magic mushrooms one day. The next day I took 5 grams. This was probably nearly 2 years ago. I didn't release the trip report because of how mind-blowing it was. If you've seen Leo Gura's video, I'll show it here. It was the same thing that happened to him. And actually one of my mates, it happened to him, and I pointed out it was happening to him while it was happening to him, and I said it's happened to me before. And it happens to people. It's like a full meltdown, like non-dual. It just makes you like heave and rave on the floor of like no way. It's like a metaphysical fucking blowout. It's insane. Anyway, there was some people. After that, I went on a walk and I was looking around. It was nighttime, the stars. Oh my god, there was a group of like people my age listening to Mr. Traumatic. If you know, he talks about the same sort of shit, of course. And I walked up to him and I just like, I just, God, it was a strange account, but I just went up to these people and I essentially just like said hello, and they were my age and they were listening to the same sort of music and shit, and like I literally asked if I could be friends with them. But I think, no, I didn't film it actually. I didn't film that bit. But yeah, I literally knew no one at the time, I can't lie. And like that's what I had to resort to, like, because the place I was at, it was very out. Now I'm here, I got loads of people around me, but up there I was very quite lonely, to be honest. And when I see people like my age and that, but yeah, I mean, we chilled for a bit, and then I fucking told him while I was in this psychedelic mode that what happened to me will happen to them. I told them what happened to me. I said, I know it sounds insane, but that's literally what just happened to me. And I said, eventually it will happen to you. That was the main point of the story. That's why I told you that, is because it will. There's basically there's like a Godhead state of infinite understanding of yourself and reality. And there are no loose ends. It's complete. But then the thing is, it's complete, but then there are higher ones that are more complete. And it doesn't make the one previous less complete, it just makes the one above more complete, which sounds quite like paradoxical, but that's the nature of infinity. It's infinitely capable of grasping itself in deeper and deeper levels. So they don't, as Leo Gross says, the awakenings don't contradict, they grow. So you can have a total awakening, and then you can have a total awakening that's just more total, that encapsulates the previous one, but with more insight, or awakening, or truth. And it grows forever. There's no limit. That's the nature of infinity, true infinity. True infinity is identical to love, is identical to God, is identical to the big self. It's weird how when you catch on to it, you actually get it. Like it took me years, to be honest. I thought I got it, but when you actually hear yourself, like, it does make sense, and it's weird. But I never took it on blindly. Like, it took me a fucking long minute to actually grasp these ideas. But you forget and you re-remember. It's weird. Whenever I forget, I'm like not happy, I swear. Then I remember and it's like holistic. That's the thing. But when you remember, it's holistic. That's the thing. And then when you start questioning, oh, maybe I was just crazy, actually, it's fragmented. But when you're in the spiritual psychosis, it's holistic. It's complete, it's whole, and it's positive. So yeah, that's it, I guess, for now. Check out actualize.org, Deconstructing the Myth of Science, part 1, part 2, part 3. It's like 10 hours. I ain't even watched all that one yet. That's one of them I ain't watched. I've watched like most of his, well, over half, I'd say. Alright, that'll do. Thank you very much for watching, and I love you. It's OXSN. OXSN. See ya!